This podcast was made possible by Adult Time. We are huge fans of watching porn to get into the mood, but unfortunately, not all porn is created equal. So where do you find good porn these days? We love Adult Time. Created by an award-winning women filmmaker, Bree Mills, and dubbed the Netflix of porn, Adult Time offers over 60,000 episodes and at least 5 new releases every day. And it properly supports the hard-working performers in the scenes.
And for a limited time only, they have something special just for you. Right now, you can get 1 week absolutely free. Go to adulttime.com and use the promo code SHAMELESS. That's adulttime.com, promo code SHAMELESS. Go check it out.
I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and sex shop owner.
And I'm April, VP of an international high-end pleasure products company and boss queen sex toy mogul. We're best friends who make our own rules about who we are as sexual beings.
With everything from how to be a badass in the bedroom to top tips for bringing your relationship to the next level, we have something just for you.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Podcast. Oh, I know the episode number, 141.
Wow. How'd you do that?
I don't know. My memory is just somehow working.
I can't believe something's working today in our brains because both of us have been like, brr.
We're having one of those days where everything that we try to do is not working.
Well, we had a long bucket list of things that we had to get done today, and then we've had a technical difficulty here. Yeah. Another thing we couldn't figure out there, and then interruptions and
one of those
dogs
days.
Barking. But you know what? We're here, and we're doing the intro for this amazing interview with a repeat guest, yes. Melissa, who is just incredible.
She's incredible. She's a therapist, a sex therapist. She does all kinds of stuff on gender identity. She's here to talk about trauma, kink, all kinds of stuff. So, she's incredible. And this is our actually the only guest we've had that has been a third time.
This is the third time.
Revisit, and we'll have her again next year.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
So we are going to dive into the podcast shortly. I'm going to read a testimonial. We got a really awesome testimonial from a listener. I think it actually came in today. Dearest listener who is awesome, who sent us this testimonial, they say, my partner of 10 years has never really liked oral sex. I love going down on her, and while she would when she would while she would let me, it would only be for a minute or two. I tried all I could think of, but nothing worked. Finally, I started listening to your show and really focused on the oral pleasure podcasts. I would mention things you both said and would get a, well, that's interesting response. A couple of weeks ago, we were playing and I told her I really wanted to try some of the things that I learned. She agreed and I started with a massage, rubbed her entire body from head to toe. I took things really slow. When I finally moved things between her legs, I gave her a nice pussy hug and she loved it. The pussy hug is a regular part of our foreplay now. I went slower than slow and then slower than that. She didn't stop me. She didn't say it was ticklish or too sensitive. And I gave her first oral orgasm. Her first oral orgasm ever. We owe all to you two and your wonderful guests. Thank you.
That's really awesome. I'm telling you, that pussy hug.
That pussy hug is
really nice. The aftercare too, with prior to and then aftercare with the pussy hug is awesome.
Pussy hug, aftercare, going slower than slow and then slower than that. And then also this whole exploration of the whole body.
Yeah.
It sounds like there also just wasn't this pressure. It was all the things. It was all the things encompassed in this wonderful session.
And I will just give a really short confession. So the slower than slow thing for me doesn't work all the time. Sometimes I need to go faster. Mm-hmm. And so I'll be like, hey, come on, let's pick it up.
Well, I say slower than slow to me is like initial.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you just come on my body and you start rubbing me really quickly, I'm going to desensitize and disappear. Well, so there's a time and a place for fast and hard. I'm not saying that that's not valid.
Well, I need some, I like kissing.
Yeah.
And I need
kissing.
it. So if someone just goes straight for the genitals or the titties, my nips, it's not happening.
Like, what about the rest of this body, motherfucker?
Like,
hello. Yeah, I'm a big kiss. And this is something that we hear a lot in long-term relationships. One of the first things to go out the window often is making out. And people love that and crave that. I mean, even in casual hookups sometimes.
Well, actually, a lot of female, let me say vulva-owning humans, biologically, they need kissing. It's part of their, I think it was in Emily Nagoski's book, talking about kissing as actually one way to biologically turn on some of the other parts of the body.
Yeah. I'm again, a huge fan. My last relationship I was in for 5.5 years, we never stopped kissing or making out. That never left. That was like, that's always really present. We were also always on a roller coaster, so maybe that's why.
We're back.
Yeah.
We're gone. We're back.
Yeah, this is confusing, but at least we're still making out. But I mean, yeah, that is a really important thing for me. And if, and I can't say everyone's different, of course, but.
And I also want to just shout out to all of our Australian listeners, and I hope you're all okay in the fires that are going on there.
Oh, yeah,
So
you were just on a
scary.
call with some folks in Australia.
I just was on a business call with some Australia folks, and they said it's very smoky. And we've been in that boat before. The California fires have always been a situation. So if you are listening and in Australia, I hope that you are safe, and I wish you the best.
And to all the koalas and kangaroos.
I know all the animals.
I know. Helpless.
And I'm supposed to go to Australia, I think, in March. It's potential, and I can't bring Leggy.
Sorry, Ledge. He's been a little shit today, so.
I know. I
Love
don't know
him
where
to
I'm
death.
at. Maybe I'll just, put him up for adoption at that point.
I'll
I
dog sit.
I
Just
know.
get him fully potty trained first, and then he can come over to
it's
it.
been a hassle.
Auntie Amy's house. All right, we have a sex question. My wife and I are trying to make things work after she had an affair. We are great friends and most of our life is wonderful. However, the sex is not so great. She really enjoyed the sex with her hot affair partner and would love to have great sex with me, but we just have not had a great time with intercourse specifically. When I have an erection, it stands straight up and super stiff. I have minimal range of motion. I can move it maybe 90 degrees downward and less than 45 to the right and left. She says that when I penetrate, it's painful or uncomfortable. Missionary is the best position for me because of this, but this is also boring for her, and I can't give her what she truly wants in this realm. I want to know if there's anything I can do about this. Is there a way to control how far my erection goes? Are there stretches for flexibility? I'm desperate and really want to fix this. This is a very interesting question to me. I'm going to start with I'm not going to feel like I have the perfect answers to these because it's a very unique question, and I'm intrigued by it. That's why I was like, we gotta dive into this question.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is this person there's an affair. There's wife said I had great sex with this other person, not so much here. An erection that is standing straight up, so it's completely perpendicular from the body.
Right. So I was picturing it almost next to the belly button.
Oh, you're picturing that kind of straight up.
That's what I was picturing.
I was thinking straight up, like
like
if
a
this
perpendicular. You're thinking perpendicular, not parallel.
Yeah,
So
like-
I was thinking parallel.
straight up could be two different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read that part again, though. real
Okay,
quick.
so we'll go back here. Listener, you might need to email us again.
Yeah. Can you?
So when I-
don't send us a picture. Just email us
Can you
a
send a
description.
picture of your dick to April Lampert at, just kidding. When I have an erection, it stands straight up and is super stiff. I have minimal range of motion. I can move it maybe 90 degrees downward and less than 45 to the left or right.
So I was thinking it like this, but maybe because
Let's think of what would be more uncomfortable and that they can only
This
do
way.
if it's going up to like
because if it's missionary style, think about how you enter when it's missionary style. You kind of put it like you would curve it like this, right?
So you're saying that if it's curved up and it stands straight up and
It
it's
probably
like,
hurts because it probably maybe hits your part of like the top of your vaginal canal in such a way.
but you're saying it's curved up as if it was a toy that was curved
Not
up.
curved, that it's standing,
Sticking straight up.
up.
But you're saying towards the face as opposed to up towards like
Right, straight out. I
perpendicular,
feel like
straight
straight
out.
out would be.
Oh my God, listener, you need to email us again so you can tell us what you were talking about here because this is hard for me.
I mean, you might be right. That's how I initially.
I don't know. I have no
perceived it.
idea.
Yeah.
I was like, so that was one of my questions. Like, okay, well, what's happening here? But okay, there's a couple things that came up for me. The person is specifically asking, can they control how far their erection goes? So maybe you're right. It is straight up towards the face because it's going. That's a really far. That erection's moving like, and it goes all the way up, but they can move it down
Because that would be more out of the norm. That would be atypical, right? Because most erections go kind of straight out.
Well,
Not
or,
straight up.
or they have like a little curve up
A little bit.
too. But as people get older and they age, the erection
Gravity's-
goes down, and then it can go straight up perpendicular, and then it can actually go downward even more. Also, with top heavy cocks, like bigger cocks. they don't go straight up. They're hanging out, like either hanging out with a perpendicular or kind of hanging downward too, or they have like a, kind of will go outward on the base, but then it will droop on the bottom.
Right.
So everyone is really different, but I think regardless of the direction, you can send us a follow-up email with more information on it. No dick pics, please, but with more information. But they're asking how do they can potentially control how far the erection goes, and if there's stretches for flexibility. So in terms of stretching, here's what I was thinking about. You remember
my old college roommate?
Yeah, your friend.
If he's listening, you know who you are. I don't think he listens.
The one who used to get a wet T-shirt and like
no, it was a towel.
Towel.
Yeah.
And they would put it on their hard cock and hang it there and do like Kegel exercises.
Right. Would do push-ups in the mirror. 1 and 2.
And I know that one would traditionally think, sorry, I just have to say, the dogs just walked in and we're just not sure how they got in, opened the door, and this is such a weird day. Okay. But anyways, so I think people think that when you do these strengthening exercises, it's going to make things stiffer and firmer. But in fact, what I think they do is they give you more control of the muscle structure.
Control?
Well, no, the muscle structure too. Yes, ejaculatory control, erection, erectile stuff, but of the muscle structure. And so I'm just curious about that. If this person actually did more stretches or worked more on the muscle structure, if they might actually have more control of the flexibility.
What would that look like doing the wet towel thing?
So you can do Kegels, which is like the tightening and releasing of the pelvic floor muscles. So it's like as if you're stopping the flow of urine. You're in your mid pee, and April's about to walk in the room. And you're like, you don't want her to see, and you clench to tighten the urethra. And so that, and then the release, the clench and release is a Kegel. So do that, or to throw the wet towel in there too, to add weight to it. But so I don't have the perfect answer to this. These are just some ideas that came up. Again, people think that when we work on the muscle structure, that means it's going to be stiffer, when really I think it just gives us more control over the muscle structure.
I have something to add, which don't interrupt you.
Oh, you're fine.
I think that, and not regarding actual ability to shift how your erection is controlled. It more has to do with the affair portion, because I think that it's great that you've tried to work it out and that it seems like you're having sex again. However, it seems like there's still some stuff there that may need to be worked out, maybe with a therapist or between the two of you, regarding like the sex that was had, and it could also be it probably doesn't feel super good that every time you go to have sex with your partner, there's this idea that the sex that they were having or she was having with this person, was better. I mean, that can't feel good, and that also probably needs to be addressed on some level.
I'm also curious about, where he's like, this person's like, something wrong with my body, and there's nothing wrong with your body, by the way. But what about her body? Like, what about maybe she has the twisted,
tilted uterus?
Tilted uterus, yeah. So maybe there's something there in her vaginal canal that, it's not saying that you two still aren't going to work well together, but you just maybe haven't found out the magic fit based on your anatomy, and it might be her anatomy, it might not necessarily just be yours.
And depending on if they have a sex regularly, like a few times a week, or if it's just once a month, and maybe there's been times where it's painful because her cervix is dropped, and so the way that the sex is hitting her body. I mean, I've had painful sex with people before, and I've realized that it was just our bodies weren't necessarily meant to be. I wasn't meant to be penetrated by them at certain times, and I didn't know. I didn't have enough sex. Yeah,
and there's a lot of things. How long is your cock? Is your cock super long? There is the O nut, which is the thing that you can put on the base of your cock. So if your cock's actually hitting it's really long, it's hitting her cervix, or if her cervix is really low, the O nut is something you wear in the base.
It's like a stopper.
Like a stopper. So there's that one. There's what kind of movements are you doing? Are you doing a lot of thrusting, or maybe more grinding is more helpful? And then I'm also curious about if you use a hand too on your cock. You said it can move. The angle can change a little bit instead of just going handless and doing the movements. If you have a hand on the base and you're always kind of tilting it in a certain direction, if that could help.
What about a shaft vibrating cock ring? If your partner, the vulva owning portion of your partnership, if she enjoys vibration, that could be like a clitoral stimulator. You could put a shaft cock ring on and like grind on, like the Atom from ATOM, Atom from Hot Octopus. That's a great toy for grinding on people that like external stimulation, missionary style, or on top. So that could be at least some sort of tool to help them enjoy.
Well, also trying propping pillows under her
The liberator
her
wedge
pelvis,
thing?
yeah, or even under your pelvis. Just getting creative, trying all these different things. Yeah, there's a liberator wedge. They have that at purepleasureshop.com. Also, the Adam, you get 15% off with coupon code Shameless Sex. But you can or to try these things, prop a pillow under there, and sometimes it's just this simple change of the tilt of the pelvis of your pelvis or theirs that change is a game changer. And then last thing that I had was the Deuce harness, which we talked about in the last podcast, or maybe the podcast before, which is a harness that you can wear, and the top holds. It's the Deuce, DEUCE by Spare Parts. Again, Pure Pleasure has that. The top hole is for the dildo, and you put any size dildo in there, so you can find the perfect dildo that is the perfect angle for her pussy. And then your cock can be in the hole in the bottom, and you can still have stimulation with hands and things on there too.
Do you think a cock ring like the Atom Plus, which is designed to fit shaft and balls, would kind of help because it has like the
maybe it would pull the
top
cock down?
Yeah, I was just thinking
That's
that.
a possibility.
I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You could try that. It's a $99 sex toy. Then you get 15% off.
Yeah.
Pure. I can't even say
I can't
it.
talk today.
I can't talk.
Pure Pleasure.
You've heard it
Girl.
before. But Atom Plus is a double motored cock ring, and that could, because it is a large motor, because you place it around the balls and the shaft, so it could help pull down.
I'm curious about that. Yeah, because it's connected to your balls, and so maybe it would pull it away from your body and keep it in place.
Right.
If we are talking about it being an issue where it is straight up, meaning pointing at your face,
right,
that could help. See, but this is like, again, we started this sex session with, we don't have all the perfect answers.
I just feel like straight up is that, and straight out would be that. This is
straight out. I think it was a perpendicular if it was straight out.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Send us a dick pic. Just kidding.
Yeah, right. At this point, we probably need one.
At this point, we actually need a dick pic.
And, but honestly, the Atom Plus might. When you were talking about the Deuce, I was like, that would work. And then I just thought of how the Atom Plus is on the penis. Like when I've seen it on a penis and used it, it does sort of, because it's at the top of the shaft, and it kind of does pull it down.
Yeah.
You'd have to just try it though.
Yeah.
So
try some things out, get creative. And I'm not hearing that it's the end of the world. I like what April said about doing the work around the affair, and just make sure that you don't take this all on as your problem. This is not a problem, and it's not all yours. Like, this is a communal effort between the two of you, and that, you know, there is an affair that happened, and there might be something in the shape of your wife's body too that, you know, I can't say exactly what she should do or needs to do, but it's not all you. I think we really appreciate you reaching out. Okay, let's read a bio. So with Melissa Fritchle, LMFT, is a holistic sex therapist and award-winning sex educator with a private practice in Santa Cruz, California. She's also a certified mindfulness meditation teacher and is working on a second book, The Body as Guru. She's the author of the Conscious Sexual Self Workbook and writes the Pleasure Activism blog for Transformational Pleasure. Founder and director of trauma-informed sex positive therapy training, she promotes inclusive sexual health around the world. To learn more, visit mf-therapy.com. And let's dive in. But first, did you know that a lot of vitamins have mystery additives, synthetic fillers, and shady extras that your body doesn't need? Your body is your temple, so it's important to know what you are putting inside of it. This is why we love Ritual. Ritual offers clinically proven, science-backed multivitamins for women with carefully chosen absorbable nutrients for your precious body.
I've been taking Ritual vitamins for over a year now, and I've never felt more like a boss. It's gentle on my stomach and great for obsessive label readers like me. Ritual uses vegan-certified, non-GMO, gluten-free, and allergen-free ingredients, and their sources are out there for the whole world because they believe you deserve to know what you're putting in your body. Daily changes can lead to big results, so start small today. Ritual is offering our listeners 10% off your first 3 months. Try it out. Satisfaction is guaranteed. Go to ritual.com/shamelesssex and start your daily ritual today. That's 10% off during your first 3 months at ritual.com/shamelesssex, y'all.
And now back to the show. All right, everyone, it's episode time. We have return guest Melissa Fritchle, and we are in person. We love in-person episodes. Yay. She lives in Santa Cruz, and we love Santa Cruzians. It's so hard to find people to record with in person because nobody lives here.
Not a lot of people live here. The last time you were on was May, right?
Last summer,
2019.
actually.
Okay.
I think it was July.
Because I just got Legend.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, so it was July.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Summer, I think.
Yeah. I still lived in my little, my house.
No, she came here.
I did come here.
Yeah.
Oh, you came here?
Yeah.
But
She's-
where
we recorded
did
with
you
her
come to my
This is
house?
our third time.
Oh, this is the third time.
She's a third
the
return
third time.
guest.
Oh,
my God, you
wow.
might be the only third return guest.
I think so.
Exciting.
And that's because there's such a huge need for what your work entails and what you're doing, and we'll talk more about that for sure. But it's like you're needed.
Yeah.
You're needed. So 3 times, third time's a charm. But
Thank you.
The other two were charming.
charming too. So
They're all charming. So, we already did the intro and talked about it. We're going to dive deeper into trauma. We have some sex questions here from listeners. And I think we've talked about this on, of course, past podcasts. We're talking about SSRIs and depression and all these different things too. And in that, we're talking about trauma, and that a lot of these things, the anxiety and depression, are coming from trauma.
Right.
And I loved what you shared, and we can dive in deeper. I'm sure you have a lot to share about this. But when you got here, you shared the piece of that. A lot of folks think that when you do the trauma work, that you can't do the sexy work of like the ways I want to play, and that they have to be separate. Can you share a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely within my field of, psychotherapy, I was really frustrated to find that there was sort of this split in these different communities. There was the trauma community that was really looking at things like sex has to be safe, and oftentimes they had a monogamy kind of bias. And sort of the traditional model of trauma treatment was that you go through several stages, and at the final stage of healing, you get to address sexual issues.
Then you get to finally have fun. Yeah.
Right. And it was just really frustrating and really sad. And then I would find this, the other community, the sex positive community, that sort of wanted to maybe sort of step around trauma and sort of say, we're not really dealing with trauma. We're just dealing with the fun stuff and the how to make sex more positive and feel more empowered. And so I've been really motivated in the last few years to say, we need to bring these things together. And we can. There's really no reason not to. And I think the more we start to understand trauma healing and trauma treatment, the more I've been seeing that, we heal when we feel safe and comfortable. And I actually think that we learn things more deeply when we're enjoying ourselves, right? When we're feeling pleasure, when we're connected to our body. And what better place to do that than around our sexuality? And so what I'm finding with my clients and, with people that I'm training is that when we start to bring in sexual skill building and sexual empowerment and just the environment that says you get to have fun while having sex now, not some future time in which you've got all your shit figured out, right? But now you get to start having fun, then people are finding that they can connect more to their bodies, that they're able to actually do more of the trauma healing too, because they're learning a way to feel relaxed. But I think there's a really interesting thing about sex where you get this tension, right? You get to have relaxed tension, which is something I talk about a lot, which is something that we need to learn how to manage in life in general, right? How to feel excited and maybe a little nervous and, a little bit of an edge, but also knowing that we're safe and relaxed and in connection with our body and present. And so sex can be this really perfect place to start to learn those things and as a catalyst.
And I think trauma, depending on the severity too, isn't a switch that's ever going to just be able to be turned off completely, right? So waiting to fix yourself from the trauma, or which no one, is broken.
Right.
There's only some healing like you were talking about. But I think that's a great point to why wait? You could be waiting a long time because you're never feeling the level that you thought you would feel even when you're doing the work. So incorporating the two is really, I think, genius. And I can't believe it hasn't been really done or there's been any more folks out there kind of combining the two practices. So I'm glad that you are.
I think we're seeing it more and more just in general that, sexual health and sexual healing is becoming more a part of psychotherapy in general. I mean, when we're talking about earlier generations, those things were sort of separate on their own.
Because people didn't have sex.
Right.
I mean, no one was doing it.
It was just a compartmentalized thing that we don't
just
talk
for
about.
babies.
Yeah.
Right.
How are babies made? Oh, a stork delivers them.
Oh my God, the stork
The
story.
stork.
Yes. But I love your point too, that, trauma is is unfortunately such a part of our culture. And it doesn't mean that we're broken, and it doesn't mean that we have to wait for anything, right? It just is, it means that there are certain things that you want to be more tender with yourself about and more aware of as you step into them. But, you know, I think the models that we're looking at around trauma too are, trauma isn't a specific event. You know, we used to think that trauma meant a particular abuse or physical thing that happened to you, or, you know, or a series of things. But we can experience trauma, especially around sexuality, just by living in a culture that doesn't make us feel safe, right? Because of how we look, because of the body that we're in, because of the way that our sexuality expresses itself. Not feeling safe for an ongoing period of time is itself a trauma. So that's a massive amount of people, of course, right? None of us are alone in experiencing trauma or feeling unsafe. And so much to me about sexual empowerment is about overcoming that and reclaiming our own safety in whatever way we have to, within the realities of the world we live in, unfortunately.
Do you work with, I know that you do a lot of work with gender identity. Do you work with trans folks with body dysmorphia?
I do, yeah.
That was the thought that came to me when you're talking about, like, there might not be one traumatic experience, but you're trying to fit in a culture that doesn't allow for your expression, and you don't identify with the body that you're in.
Right.
And so that was what came up for me is, I mean, that what a challenging place to be in.
Right.
And what probably a lot of, I'm sure that's a lot of it's challenging work to do with them, of course, too. To like, what do you do? It's a big piece, right?
I mean, right. I mean, it's so much about acknowledging. You know, I mean, I think we don't want to minimize that for many people, just walking outside the door is unsafe, right? You don't know how people are going to respond to you, how you're going to be seen, whether that's because something's invisible within you, like, and isn't seen, like. Being gay or lesbian or bi, which someone might not see, you know, they don't read it, or whether they are seeing something that your gender presentation isn't typical, you know. And so knowing that people are having to armor themselves and walk out in the world and feel unsafe, and that has an effect on the way that they can then find safety within themselves, you know. And so I think a lot of the therapy work is, one, first acknowledging that and really honoring and saying you are not wrong, right? That this is traumatizing and it's unfair and it's not okay. And then secondarily saying, and we can find places where you do feel safe. Let's figure that out, where you have moments of being safe, whether it's a home that you create, it's a community that you create, it's a relationship that you create. Maybe it's at the beginning only the therapy office, you know. But finding those moments to remember what safety feels like, to feel into that in your body, so that then it can become a place where you return to, you know, more often.
And I would love to encourage folks out there listening, and this is something that just came up for me thinking about folks that are non-binary, or they're, you know, just their gender they don't have a gender identity, really. They're not sure. And I've been in so many situations over the course of especially my sex positive career, where I've heard people, you know, stare at someone and then say something that I was like, no, don't make a judgment. Who cares if they're he or she, or if they have long hair, boobs, and a beard? Like, what? There's nothing to see. Are they harming you? And so I just want to encourage and invite folks out there, if you do see someone that is like atypical to something you're not used to, or someone that looks different than you, or maybe you're not sure, it doesn't matter what you think, and release the judgment of who they are. And how about accepting and smiling and not caring what their identity is, because
celebrating that we all get these options. You know, how amazing that we could all just be different.
Exactly.
We're all different. Yeah, it's so funny when I pretend like we're all the same. We should be like, who the fuck came up with that shit? Because that is not what's happening.
No.
Here. And I think,
I love the differences.
It makes us beautiful.
Humans.
This colorful rainbow, and adding to that piece is like, people are going to judge. You know, I think it can be natural for humans to judge. It's what you do with it. It's the energy that you put out. It's the energy that you do with it.
Yeah.
And what I'll say is, like, if you feel judgment and discomfort on someone, also maybe asking yourself, like, why is this so uncomfortable for me? Instead of just being like, I feel and therefore it is. You know, like, inquire about your internal landscape. Like, why am I having such a hard time with this person that's different from me? Is it my upbringing? Is it the messages I had just because they're different? It's because I don't understand. Right. And I think there's a lot available there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a big key to empowering yourself, is realizing we've been taught to be afraid of a whole bunch of things.
The world is so scary.
Right. That we don't actually need to be afraid of. Right. Yeah. But the message has been there that we do, and that like reclaiming our own empowerment to say, you know, we can manage like things we don't know. We can manage like being surprised. We can, you know, move through the world in a way that doesn't have to be fear-based. Yeah. You know, but that's easier said than done.
Easier said than done, yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I think of the people that are doing the trauma work, and it's such an uphill battle for so many. Maybe not everyone. Some people it could probably be overnight, but and so like what you're saying. There's not a hierarchy of trauma. It doesn't have to happen one way where you just have this one event. You know, it can be just being in existence, and it's not an easy journey. And you know, not to. I mean, you can try to do it alone, but I would guess your advice is to like get support.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't think you should have to do it alone, and just being witnessed is a big piece of the healing. And I would say, you know, I mean, that's an interesting thing. You know, we have this thing about trauma, like it is hard work, and that is true to a certain degree. But what I want to invite people to think about more is that it's slow work, really, but it could actually be slow and very gentle. I see a lot of clients that come to therapy for the first time, and they're thinking like, this is going to be all about me just sobbing for days and days, and it's going to be endless, and it has to be painful. And what I would say about that is actually doing work from a place, again, where you can stay mindful and safe and don't feel overwhelmed is a key piece of doing it. Like, you don't push yourself into feeling scared again or overwhelmed. Like, your therapist, your support person, your coach, whoever it is, your partner, ideally is going to help you find this balance where you're touching in on the pain, you know, and you're able to address it, but you're also feeling like, in this moment right now, I'm safe. In this moment right now, I can look at this pain and be received and, you know, accept myself and breathe and not feel completely overwhelmed.
And that's what it really is, right? It's the acceptance of yourself. That's what kind of the healing really is. Because I'm the instant gratification human, right? And so when I start touching in on some of the painful experiences, maybe the trauma that I've had in my childhood to my teenage years, I'm always like, when is it going to be done? When am I going to be good with this? And I realize it's maybe I'll never be completely over it. It's just I have to accept myself for those things and know that I'm awesome. And it's like falling deeply in love with yourself.
Absolutely.
No matter what's happened to you.
Yes. And that you're okay. Like you will get through this. And it isn't where we want to be necessarily in those hard moments. But to slow down and be kinder to ourselves rather than harder. And I think the model that we've got, and it's kind of a cultural model, but it also, you know, is sort of just a human model, is like push and be hard and, you know, do the right thing. We're going to get through this, right? Like, again, at this idea that there's something to like get to in which you're now okay, rather than like, you're actually okay. And this is life. But we also have this interesting model, and it's kind of the Puritan mindset that we, you know, have in this country, where if we're suffering, we feel like we're doing something wrong, we're failing. And I think there's, you know, part of Buddhist psychology and part of the work is actually suffering is a part of our lives. You know, I would say almost all of us have had trauma of some kind. We certainly are all grieving right now, in particular in the state of our world. But in general, we will all have things we will grieve. We will all have things that happen to us that we didn't want. And that doesn't mean that you're failing in any way, right? It's part of life. And so being kind to ourselves and saying, like, coming back to the beginning, I still get to actually also be happy and also enjoy my life and also dance and play and do all those things, while also saying, and there's these really sad things that I'm healing, that I'm working through, all of it.
And experiencing those things help you feel the vibrations and the great energy of the good stuff so much more deeply, at least. And I'm a true believer, and call this wooey or whatever it is, that our ancestral DNA, like our DNA is composed of all of this trauma that we inherit upon our birth. When we come out of the vagina, it's like you're already a little bit carrying some of the trauma from our ancestors, depending on what happened. And there's a lot of human shitty things that have happened from the Catholic Inquisition to the genocide of the natives.
I mean, I have this thing I've probably talked about in here. I have a weird thing with sleep. And my mom, my mom who's probably listening, hi mom, love you. And she's very open about her sexual trauma. She had a lot of sexual trauma when she was a kid and always happened at night. And so sleep is a weird thing for her too. You know, there's like a scariness that comes with it. Although I guess it's better now. She did a lot of EMDR work. And so I've always had it as well. I was always terrified when I was younger. And so I'm not sure, was this someone, did I come out of the womb with this already? Or was this something that I just witnessed her fear and like felt it? Even though I didn't hear her say, I'm scared at night, but there was something that, nature, nurture, all these pieces here too. But I mean, I would believe in all of that. And which brings me to the point of like the brilliance of the body. And so I know the work you do is very embodied, very mindful, in that when we speak about trauma, I have the book here, The Body Keeps the Score here, that the body holds in the information, it remembers, and then it reacts accordingly, whether you're feeling anxiety, depression, your body tightens up. We have the sex question here about someone with vaginismus. I said that right. Maybe I should ask that right now. Should we go into, or do you want to add something?
We'll get to that. I mean, I think that one of the things about experiencing trauma is that it can cause us to feel like we can't trust our body, right? Or that our body isn't a safe place to be in because it experienced pain or victimization.
It's not mine.
It's not mine, or just like it's scary to be here. And so a lot of trauma healing is coming back into the body, and saying like finding the ways that the body is a place that you can trust. You can trust its own instincts, right? And pleasure is one of the ways we do that, right? Like finding that access to the fact that your body has such amazing potential to feel pleasure, which is, it's a huge gift that we get to go around in. Even, I remember after surgery one time, I was not feeling good in my body. My body wasn't feeling like a super great place to be. I was still in the hospital post-surgery and eating like this ice cold blueberry, that my partner had brought for me. And I was just like, wow, even in this moment, I can have pleasure, right? My body is giving me access to that. That's amazing. Like what an amazing ally I have here, so trauma healing work for me is often connecting people back to simple pleasure first, right? Potentially. And for some people, sexual pleasure has been available. It's been one place where they had pleasure throughout their life, because there's this intensity that was there and present for them. So trusting yourself either way, whether you felt like sexual pleasure was absent or whether it felt very present, both of those places are places that are good to turn to in learning to say our body's an ally, it's an okay place to be, And then what I hear from people a lot is they say like, a lot of times the trauma response is my heart might want to have sex, but my body reacts as though I don't, right? Which is vaginismus is an example. So we can maybe get more specific to that. But I think, so a lot of times people are like, my body's lying, is the way that they frame that. And it's not that your body's lying, it's that your body's asking you to go a little slower. Your body is being maybe a little hyper aware, hyper alert, but it's saying like, let's make sure that things are okay. It doesn't mean you can't trust your heart and your mind who's saying, I want to be with my partner right now. I want to be with this person right now. I want to be sexual right now. But if your body is responding with fear, that's just a sign to say like, okay, we just need to reassure the body a little. We might need to slow down a little, right? Make sure that we're checking, our list that things do feel safe and secure and that you feel like you can trust and you feel like you can communicate. So there's a sort of a new way of having to be in communication with your body. And a lot of times people can get frustrated with that because it can feel slow.
Feels like it's a lot to do with presence. I mean, you bringing it back to the blueberry. It's being there and not thinking about maybe the past experience right then and tapping into that, and not the future of what could happen, but like tapping into that moment of what you're experiencing and being just completely present. Yes. Which we talk a lot about and that's what anxiety is, right? It's the fear of what if.
Yeah, you're not here right
and
now.
And then there's so many levels of that, right? And depression's a lot of that same sort of the downward spiral of almost the things that were, right? So it's like these two opposite things. So like the presence, and I love that blueberry analogy because I really did feel like your pain of the hospital and then the sensation of eating just.
I know.
This
I
cold
felt like I
blueberry.
got a cold blueberry in my mouth.
I know. I really tapped into that. So that's great.
Well,
info.
and you're talking about also the practices can be outside of sex. It's like these little ways. It's like, I love what you're saying, that it's the presence, it's the slowing down, it's, staying open to all the little ways that you can feel your body again, feel joy, feel pleasure. And I think a lot of people get set on it being one way, especially when it comes to sex, right? It's like, there's orgasm and extreme pleasure, and then there's not. Or there's my body's turned off. It's numb or it hurts. And they, even with that, there's like these little in betweens of like, what's just the subtle sensation? Oh, just a little tingling, little warmth.
Right. Yeah. What's the softest place on your body? Find that. What's the warmest place right now? What is that little? What part of your partner's body right now smells really good to you? Like all of these things are focusing things that bring you into pleasure. It doesn't have to be about, and someone can be just as detached during a really intense orgasm as somebody who feels that they're numb and aren't feeling anything, So, for me, the body has been the place to be mindful. It's so much easier, sitting. I do sit and do mindful meditation in that way, and try to clear my thoughts and whatnot. But it's most effective for me if I'm feeling in my body. That's what gets me here. It gets me present. It gets me aware. And I think that's true for a lot of people, right? I'm a certified mindfulness meditation teacher as well. And I know that that's being, put out there right now as sort of a panacea. Mindfulness will help with everything. And, what we find for a lot of people who do have, traumatic memories is having to sit in your own mind is really not that comfortable a place. But you can be mindful in the body and in sensation. And that might be an easier place to start. It's certainly often compelling, right, to be able to feel a touch on your skin or a sensation that you like or a taste that you like. So I really encourage people to think about just taking the present moment with your body, right? And that will lead to better sexual sensation as well, right? Any awakening of sensation can lead to enjoying that more.
So is your advice to folks, let's say they're in a partnership and they feel like they have a lot of trauma and that their body isn't a safe place, or they're not really connected to it, is some of your advice to them is to develop their own self-touch and self-care practices so that it's not just relying on this other person to do it for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. To take that time, and again, that more subtle touch with yourself, right? Because it's easier to be mindful and aware when it's just you in the room that you're all thinking about. And then when you're trying to do this with a partner and things are moving and you're doing this and they're touching you and, and you've got communication to do, it's a lot more complicated. So to go back to this simple, just connecting to your body, and for a lot of people, it's very challenging of just like really take a mindful shower when you shower in the morning.
Ooh.
Get soap that you like the texture and smell of, body wash, like get a scrub thing that you like, and actually be thinking like, these are my feet that I'm cleaning right now. And they do a lot for me. And these are my calves. And what does it feel like to run my hands up my calves and my thighs? And, there may be parts of the body that they're not ready yet to sort of pay attention to. And you can just notice that, right? But there's little ways that we can be more in touch with ourselves and recognizing that we've got this body, this body that's ready to engage with us and give us pleasure.
And on that, so that sex question, the vaginismus, I liked what you're saying about, I'm not really sure, remember exactly how you worded it, but that, my body's lying to me, but instead it's actually, your body's actually trying to tell you something.
Right.
And for those who don't know what vaginismus is, maybe you can describe it a little bit better. It's a tightening of the pelvic floor muscle, especially the vaginal canal.
Right. So there's a ring of very strong muscle at the opening to the vagina. And what happens with vaginismus is that muscle cramps shut. and it's pretty painful, right? And it's not something that you can do on purpose, right? And so usually for someone, and often there's a history of trauma, that's happening when there's anything that might be inserted, right? So penetration is possible. So that can happen when somebody's using a tampon or going for a gynecological exam, as well as sex with a partner where penetration might be part of it. And vaginismus is just one variation of sexual pain. There's lots of other ways, but oftentimes people know about it because they, literally can't have anything penetrate.
Because this question this person's asking, they said it hurts when they're on top, it hurts when they use sex toys. Can't use sex toys in any position except lying on their back because it's painful to insert. Otherwise, lube isn't seeming to help. How do you manage this thing? They want to be able to be intimate with other people too.
And they were diagnosed with vaginismus?
Doesn't say necessarily diagnosed, but they said
that's what they assumed it is.
They can't be penetrated because the muscles contract too tightly.
Right. Yeah. So the first thing I would say to them, I hope they're listening, is there is hope, right? And this can change. And it is often, it's a slower process of slowing down with yourself and doing mindfulness practices. I would encourage working with a coach or a sex therapist or a gynecologist who is aware, which unfortunately isn't always super easy to find. I would also say that, so vaginismus can come from a trauma history, but there's also other sexual pain things that could be happening because of allergies, dermatological issues that are often missed in a regular gynecological exam. So anybody who's experiencing sexual pain of this kind or sexual functioning difficulties, I would say go to a sexual pain doctor, which is different than your regular OBGYN. Right?
Different training. Yeah.
Different training, different doctors specifically. And you may have to search a little bit, but one, there could be things that could help in that way because you could be having an allergic reaction that's now causing pain, that's now causing your body to tighten, right? Or it can be that, there's a psychological reason why your body is tightening up and saying sex doesn't seem like a safe thing right now, in which case therapy helps with that, kind of processing whatever beliefs, it may not have been a trauma. Again, it could have been shaming beliefs about sexuality, about your body, yourself, that you can process through and hopefully let go of. And then you can order things called dilators, which are, little things that go in very, very small range, like a Q-tip, up to what would be considered sort of an average penis size or penetration size. And you would do almost a meditation type practice, right? Of relaxation exercises, knowing how to feel into your body, knowing how to breathe, and walk through several stages of feeling comfortable with something potentially being inserted, right? If that's what somebody wants. The other thing that you can do is have all kinds of amazing sex where penetration isn't part of it, right? And I would say hopefully those things are happening concurrently. Like if you want to have penetration and you want to work on having less of this pain, you can work on that and at the same time be with partners or with yourself having other kinds of sexual pleasure so that your body gets used to that and realizes, yes, this is available to me. I don't have to be scared of that either. And just enjoying, with curiosity in that way.
I wonder if sexological body work would help too. Because
potentially.
It seems like, depending on
there's sexual body work, or we had Dr. Sarah Townsend, who's a pelvic floor specialist who works with people with vaginismus and all kinds of other issues too. But it's some hands-on stuff, and there is a lot out there. And then dilators, there's dilators, Pure Pleasure sells dilators too. If you just look up dilator on purepleasureshop.com, y'all get 15% off coupon code Shameless Sex. Yes. And so but I like that you're saying it's practice, it's slowness. It's kind of like it's staying open to with the curiosity of the exploration, being patient, right? Really listening to your body.
Yeah. And like we talked about before, psychologically, the same thing physically, don't push through the pain, actually. Use the pain.
That just cause more trauma.
Right.
If you're just like, I'm not going to listen to your body.
Or take like muscle relaxers or something.
Or numbing things.
Yes. That's always the tricky part because you think that maybe a cream that can help numb with lidocaine or something will be the answer. Right. Then you could just really do some permanent damage or something that
Right. Or if you're,
don't want
if you're going to be
our body to
hurting the
experience.
next day, your body remembers that,
Yeah.
and
Right.
and
The body
there's
keeps a score.
yes. So, I mean, slowing down and saying pain is just a sign to stop. But what happens a lot for people is they say, like, oh, if I'm feeling pain, we have to stop all engagement. I like roll away from my partner. I like stop all engagement with myself. And so what I talk to people about a lot is like, you actually don't have to stop the entire engagement. Stop what you're doing that's hurting and stay connected, whether that's to yourself, touch yourself in other ways, right? Continues telling yourself like, I'm here and this is okay, or stay connected with your partner and do other things for a while. And you may also find that the pain shifts and changes, but pushing through it and tensing up around it, which is, I mean, that's our common impulse, right? It's like, oh, tense up and push through. It's probably going to make it worse, actually, right?
So there's this. I'm moving on to another question that is a similar note. So this specific user name, Josh. Josh asks, "Hello, ladies, love the show. So I took a bunch of your advice that I've learned since discovering your wonderful show. I created a safe environment and asked my wife of 10 years if she'd had some kind of trauma in her past when it came to giving blowjobs or handjobs. She isn't a very hands-on lover, which is the total opposite of me. She admitted that her ex-boyfriend didn't give her the option not to do these things. It was just expected. How do I help her overcome those traumas and help her be more intimate lover these days? I feel like I need those touching type experiences in my sex life. Thanks, and hope to keep learning from you. Amazing chicks in the future." And I like this because now this is on the other side. Like, okay, how can a partner support?
I was totally similar to his partner. I had like a trauma,
Like pushing your head
surrounding blowjobs, and it took a long time before I even could get over. And there wasn't anything I felt like the partner could do.
Yeah.
It was really me tapping into what was traumatic, and then. But I'm sure you'll have great advice. It took some time.
Yeah,
and it took me saying no a lot, and then finally being like, okay, maybe I'll try it. But as long as I know I don't have to,
Right.
I want to do it on my own.
Right. And that's
And
so
it can't
key.
come in my mouth. Right. That was like a whole thing that I would tell them. Yes,
Right.
I was like, these are my things. These are
if
my
you do it,
boundaries.
we're out. I'm out.
Yeah, if you do it, I'm going to bite. How do you like that? Just kidding. Then they'd have trauma, and we're like, oh, well.
let's not spread the trauma around. But I mean, I think you're right. Like, absolutely. The very first thing is showing and getting this experience that you get to say no and you get to stop at any time without consequences, which is, a lot of times people are like, okay, we can stop. But again, like, I'm going to roll over and like, we're now like disengaged and, stop without consequences. Like, I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to be curious about what's happening. We're going to talk about that that's okay, which I understand is not like the sexual scenario that we all fantasize about, but it will create this juicier, more, exciting, loving
Amy does.
connection.
She fantasizes. That's like her fantasy.
Yeah.
Fantasy right there. She's like, oh, that's turning me
I
on.
love that shit. Yeah, I'm like, oh my god, they're totally there for me listening to me. My pussy's so wet.
Well, yes, it does work that way also. But, so I think that, first off, just making it clear that you can, and that sounds easy. I actually, in therapy sessions, practice with clients saying no, because we like, oh, of course I could say no. It's actually
when it comes
very
down
hard.
to it, yeah,
it's very hard in the moment, and it, people have to get over that fear of being rejected or feeling like they're doing something wrong. So, I mean, in this case, it does sound like the partner has been able to say no, and so I think in working towards seeing does his partner have any interest in?
You can't make them do it,
right?
Yeah.
Like, if they're interested in it, then what I would say is take the focus off what we think of as a blowjob, which is penis in the mouth, and say like, just start kissing other parts of the body, right? Like, see what it's like to feel your lips on skin, on penis potentially of other parts of the body. And let it be a curiosity thing rather than there's a particular thing you have to do, right?
Like end goal, or
right,
action,
right? With the partner getting to lead that, no pressure, no things like that, and then also like talking about feeling objectified, which a lot of times is part of a trauma for somebody, right? Like, I'm only wanted for this, right? That's part of victimization, as you do become an object that's used, right, in this way. And so sometimes the trauma work with couples is somebody talking about what it would mean to them and why they want something, right? maybe it's not that you want a blowjob because you think women should do that, or you think your partner owes that to you, or whatever the story may be. It's that like it would make you feel like someone was really paying attention to you, or even just like, this is a really intense pleasure and I miss it, right? But to be able to talk specifically about what sexuality means to them is often people are really surprised because we have these old kind of ugly cultural models about why people want the sexual things they do or what sex means. And being able to be more open and honest about like, people do want it because of a connection or because it will make them feel loved or because it feels good. Those things are easier to hear and they make it feel safer to want to offer it, right? Because it isn't about being used or, you know, something that you owe.
Yeah. Okay, time for a quick break. This podcast is made possible by OMGYes.com. OMGYes is a research-based online program that teaches you all about how to pleasure the pussy. OMGYes studied thousands of vulva owners to find out how they orgasm and then made tasteful and inspiring short videos to show you techniques on how to pleasure yourself or another vulva. I've been recommending OMGYes to my clients for years and it's changed their lives.
So for all you vulva owners or vulva lovers out there who may already be having good orgasms and you want to take it to the next level, or perhaps you want to explore more variety in your playtime, OMGYes will have something just for you. With 2 seasons, one all about internal and the other all about external techniques, it's better than any book or DVD money can buy. To learn more, visit OMGYes.com/shameless. Our listeners get $5 off. Check it out.
This podcast was also made possible by Uberlube. It's a luxurious silicone lubricant great for all kinds of sex. It's less likely to throw off the pH than most other lubes, and there are hundreds of doctors who recommend Uberlube to their patients, whether they want to make their hot sex even hotter or for folks who are experiencing dryness. You never knew lube could be this good.
So whether you're an avid lube lover or you've never used lube before, Uberlube is right for you. It has no flavor, no scent, and feels absolutely amazing on the body. Uberlube has endless uses. I use it to tame my hair frizzies, to prevent chafing, and I even put some in my mouth right before an oral sex session, and it totally ups my blowjob game. Oh, and the bottle, it's gorgeous. It's totally discreet and looks more like a beautiful cosmetic product, so you can even leave it on your nightstand shamelessly.
To learn why we think it's the best lube on the planet, check out uberlube.com. Use code SHAMELESSSEX and you get 10% off and free shipping. That's uberlube.com. Go check it out. And now back to the show.
Instead of, I saw this on porn
Yeah.
and this is exactly what I want.
That's what
right?
you're supposed to
It's
do
like,
when
hey,
you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's the
Right.
tricky part. So
Yeah, and I like that part about making it like as the partner. So you're saying share what what it is, what's the feeling for you, why this is important, and then creating the safety of letting them know that they can stop at any time, that you're not going to leave. You're not like, okay, well, you stop, so now all play is off. It's like, and probably thanking them too, like, wow, thank you for listening to your body, for voicing your no, and what else would you like right now, or what are you needing right now, and still staying connected. Yeah, I think that would be really powerful. How would that work for you with your trauma?
I think setting exactly kind of the game plan before going in, not when you're naked in bed and it's starting to get somewhat connected sexually, and it's like, oh, hey, by the way, can you do this for me now? And it's instead being like, hey, I just want you to know. And I think for the giver person, so not the person that wrote in the email who would be receiving, but the person that's giving, like, have a conversation before with the partners, between the partners, and then hopefully the person that is in the situation to potentially be the giver can state what they're comfortable with and say, like, hey, okay, look, I know this is really important to you. You've obviously already voiced that this makes you feel more connected to me or whatever it is, and I just want you to know I will maybe just lick for a minute or two, and then I want to stop, or I want to kiss the inner thighs for a minute, and then I want to go into a different experience with you. And I would feel totally safe if that were me in that situation. I'd feel totally safe knowing. And then if I wanted to keep going, I'm like, this is actually not so bad, or
I'm
this
actually
is
kind of
like,
enjoying this.
yes.
Or,
And because, I have to say, after switching some things around my trauma and my brain and feeling like, okay, no one's forcing me to do this. It's actually is pleasurable for this other person. I use a vibrator on myself a lot of times when I am doing, a fellatio act. And so for me, I actually now have turned it in my brain to feel like I'm almost in a position of power, and it feels really good to me now. I also do have to incorporate my own pleasure in it, so I don't just get lost in this situation and caught up in their pleasure and if they're enjoying it, right? So it's all about both of us, the journey, and I also am clear about the no ejaculate in my mouth. I'm like, you are welcome to let me know when you're going to come, but I don't want it in my mouth, and it hasn't been any sort of unattainable request. Right. It's always been met with an affirmation and a thankful for being open, like a thankful situation for being open. So I think that for this person, just having the conversation, it has been 10 years. So I am curious as to if maybe they just are a hard no, and it's like not there. They don't want to do that. Right. The hand job part, though, could be really fun. They could use the Tenga eggs or certain the sleeves to help them assist with a hand job, and it could be something that maybe might be a nice stepping stone to other acts.
And getting away from the idea of hand jobs being one thing. It's like these, I'm going to wank you off until you have an orgasm, and get away from hand jobs. Make it an erotic massage, and and maybe your hand on the penis is like you were saying, only for 2 or 3 minutes, and there's all these other things that are available there too. So just getting away with the idea that things have to be a certain way for a certain amount of time with an orgasm at the end.
And if there's any breast owners that are not comfortable with hand jobs and blowjobs, like it's fun to actually also utilize other parts of your body. The armpit. Yeah,
I remember in the original Joy of Sex. Yes, there was like armpit utilization.
Totally. There's some fun other things you can do to kind of that isn't just PIV sex or penis in anus or whatever it is. There's a lot of different ways to incorporate some play.
I just remember, the person that I'm seeing said that
likes
they
armpit sex.
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
I'm pretty sure they said that. You totally said that. You're
Shout
listening
out
right
to
now.
you. You're listening. Yeah. That's hot.
So, and the other thing that, there's lots of questions that come up with this, which is the great thing about actually, seeing a therapist or a sex coach, because you can really dive in, which is, we don't know why his partner doesn't like to give those, and so I'd have a lot of questions about that. And what I find a lot is people, and particularly people with trauma, but actually all people, feel like they don't get to say, I have this particular boundary, or ask, like, that might be fun if we showered first, right? But maybe not so fun at the end of a day.
Or maybe there's like a hair situation, because that was like a whole thing for me. I am such a germaphobe and hair in my mouth is like not a thing for me. So it was a lot of like the smells sometimes down there for me I was uncomfortable with. So there could be things that you're totally right that are not related to actually the act. It's like the possible surrounding environment that could be affecting the reason. So that's a really good point that I didn't even think about. Like the hair, like big bushy hair that's not maintained for some people could be really hard.
Manscaped.
And they don't.
Yeah, Manscaped.
For sure. And it isn't like that there's one thing for everybody, but it's just that people don't feel like they have permission to ask for something that would make it easier for them.
Right.
Right. And and so a lot of that is with partners, that permission giving of like, let's talk about what you're, what ups your sexual energy and what turns your sexual energy down. Brakes versus accelerators is one of the ways we talk about that now in the field, which is a great model, right? There's certain things that push your brakes, and they're different for everybody. They're, often not personal. They're not, about your partner per se. They're just how, you're built for that period of time. They can change. But if we feel like we don't have permission or it isn't okay to ask someone to make modifications for us, then that in itself makes sex scarier and more stressful and more of like a chore. So giving people permission to say, you get to say this, and you get to be specific about what's working for you or not working for you, or what makes you uncomfortable. Right. And then we could work it out together.
And then you can change your mind, say what you're into right now, and then we actually start. You can change your mind 5 seconds later, and that's okay. And I'll be there with you.
Right. As long as you communicate that.
Yeah, just communicate. I'm not
fairly clear way. Yes.
Yeah.
Ideally.
All right, so we have this other question from a listener who says, "Love your podcast. After listening to 5 different sex therapy podcasts, I was lucky to find this one. It's very queer and disability inclusive, which is hard to find. I'm non-binary vagina haver, and I date women. I am in a relationship now with a woman, and the problem is that we both have sexual trauma. I have maybe never had an orgasm. First, I feel like I've tried everything, but I just can't come. Second, she is on SSRIs and has a hard time coming unless it's with a vibrator. The best sex I've ever had was with someone I kind of hated, and we had amazing, kinky, sensual sex. I feel like I can't try to get my partner to have kinky sex because I don't want her to feel even slightly uncomfortable. I'm very protective of her feelings. I'd rather never come than hurt her at all. Help." It sounds like they want to explore some kinky sex too. So there's multifaceted
Which we
question.
did talk about at the beginning, that this was something, because that is true. So they want kinky sex, and they're afraid to ask their partner.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Maybe,
they're afraid to damage them, or to make them fearful.
Right. And so, I mean, I think, one, there's a conversation about just what turns each partner on there, right? That could happen. In terms of, this is a fantasy, this fantasy turns me on because, I think a lot of times people focus on, we don't know what particular kink this person is excited about, but they think, that this is a particular behavior that I'm asking my partner to do, and they don't want the behavior. So I do a lot of fantasy work with people around, like, so when you imagine this scenario, this particular kink, or, whatever you're thinking you want to do, what is the feeling state that you're getting? Like, what is actually exciting about it? So I have this fantasy about doing this because that would make me feel what, right? If you can identify a feeling, then there's lots of different ways to get to it, right? You can feel surrender without having to be tied up, right? You could play with dominance without having to tie someone else up, right? Or whatever the kink may be. The other piece that I think is in there is sort of just thinking about, oftentimes when people talk about kink, what they're talking about is intensity.
I like that.
You want more intensity, intense sensation. Like, it isn't necessarily, when people hear pain, they can be like, whoa, that's scary. Why would people want pain? Well, really what they want is intense sensation, right? And in the context of particular sexual play or particular safety, it isn't experienced as pain necessarily. It's experienced as pleasure, right? Whereas in another context, if someone walked up to you and did that while you were doing dishes, it would be pain and probably annoying, right?
Yeah.
Right?
You want to do the dishes?
Right. So a lot of it is context, right? And figuring out, like, we want to create a context in which intensity is something we can explore, right? And so, I mean, that brings us back to, like, creating maybe a slower, more mindful context where things can get really intense, well, they're actually very minor things that you're doing, right? You can have a really intense sensation of just, like, running pork tines down someone's body. Pork rinds. Eating pork rinds. Who knows?
Into it.
Right.
It could be intense.
All kinds of intense sensations by being really present and really slow. And within that context, if you're going slow, it usually feels a little safer because someone has time to figure out whether they want to say stop, right? Or I'm comfortable, or I want to change something. When things go fast is when it's hard, right? And a lot of times people think of these scenarios of having to be something that's very fast. And they, so I'd say, think about being slower and more intense. Think about sensation play, right, of all different kinds. Or, minor, like, sensory deprivation is often a part of kink, so it could be being bound so you can't use your arms or hands to touch, or being blindfolded, right? There's ways to engage with sensory deprivation play that are milder, right? Like, just putting something, like putting a scarf across your eyes that you could brush off at any time, and seeing what that does for you. Just closing your eyes, right? And so I think looking at that, there's this broad spectrum of things that you could offer or consider, rather than that you have to come to your partner with a full-fledged, like, here's the whole scene that I want to do, and like,
here's my dungeon.
Right.
I actually have been hiding.
Which is great if you've got that, in your mind going, but like, there's lots of mini steps that can give you similar excitement and similar play that might invite your partner in to the conversation a little more, right? The other thing that I would say, and I know it's a little frustrating for people to hear, is maybe orgasm isn't the goal.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. The goal is to just be able to be curious with each other and explore and, explore your bodies, explore what feels good about them, what feels, exciting, what different toys you can play with and things like that. Yeah.
More about the journey.
And maybe for this particular listener and their partner, the conversation it could open with, instead of like thinking maybe they have a weird correlation between what they think kink is, they could just call it sensation play or something different than a ball gag right, or some sort of, hey, would you be interested in trying the sensation play, and start again with the something even soft touch to see, and that's still kinky. And kind of evaluating it that way, because I think they're afraid to trigger their partner, which we don't know the level of trauma. It just seems like maybe reframing what kink is usually associated with for them would be easier.
Yeah.
I mean,
and for this listener, we don't know the level of conversation that has or hasn't happened. Right. And so a lot of times people are afraid that someone will be triggered by something because they know their history of trauma. And actually, kink play can be a way to reclaim it and feel ownership over a particular sensation or surrendering, because you're doing it in a safe, trusting context.
This time you're actually making the choices. You're calling the shots.
Right. Absolutely. And you get to, again, like, be present and experience it not in fear, right? And let that shift into excitement or just exploration. So you never know, right, until you ask, which is, that whole communication piece. It's a big one. But so we don't know what conversations have had, been had or not had for this listener.
And the question they said about SSRIs, so the episode we did, came out in July of 2019. It's episode number 113, called Depression, Anxiety, SSRIs, with Melissa here. And so I'm sure we talked a lot about that, about how SSRIs affect orgasm and touch and pleasure. So for the listener, they can go back and check that one out, because there's a lot of really good information about that. This is their partner that's experiencing that. And I really love the part that you said about the orgasm piece, that it was so, I can speak for myself. Every time I'm set on it, I get in my own way, and it doesn't happen. It's like, or maybe it will, but it's when I like relinquish that control or that need for everything to be a certain way, whether it's orgasm or anything else, then things actually happen. Or then actually this is something April talked about sexological body work. Sexological body workers are really great for this hands-on they do hands-on healing, where they can teach people to pay attention to those subtle sensations, the warmth and tingling that people are missing when they're just looking for the orgasm. Right. And I've experienced that in my sessions with them when I've been a client, where I was like, oh my God, I was totally missing that there is pleasure here. And it might not be like the big explosion that I hear that everyone is talking about or that I've experienced before, but I've just been overriding it by looking for the thing and moving too fast.
Right.
And so I love that. I feel like we could remind listeners on every episode about this, because this affects everyone.
About the journey, and it's not all about the orgasm. It's not all about...
It's the bonus.
It's not about the destination. It is. Yeah. And that is so hard to, even for me as a person that loves sex and loves to have an orgasm, it's still not achievable every time I have sex. And sometimes even when I'm solo masturbating with a toy that I've used that I know I can have an orgasm with, it still doesn't happen the way that I think it will, or when I want it to, right? So it's like, you just never know what with your body and what it's going to do. So enjoying the pleasure of your partner's, their body, and the sensation, being in the moment. It's so... That's like the juicy gem stuff that is really helpful and important.
Yeah, and there's so much available there, right? Like so many variations of pleasure and connection with one another and things like that. So absolutely.
We're cutting close to time here. I was going to look up the other episode that you were on too, but I'm not finding it. But it's in it.
We talked about boundaries versus edges.
Boundaries versus edges. Yeah.
And that was the first episode we recorded with you, which was last year.
That was probably 2018.
Probably.
We've probably been 18 and 19 and now we're 20.
Yeah.
We're having 21, 22, because we're going to be around that long. Yeah. Is there, so you have a book too that helps people to work with their all this stuff about sexual. Will you describe that?
Yeah. So I wrote the Conscious Sexual Self Workbook. It's available on Amazon. And it was really based on helping people work through their sexual history and the way that they've come to have different beliefs about sexuality or their bodies or what is expected of them. And so it has journaling prompts throughout, working through sort of what was your childhood like? What did you learn about sex and bodies and gender and all of that stuff, working through early partners and memories and things like that. It's not going to do standalone trauma work. I think there's add-on stuff for that, but I do think it's a really good baseline for people to just start to sort of shake up those old foundations that may be limiting them a little bit. And it's great for conversation with partners, because it does bring up these questions of sort of, wow, why do I believe this about the way the body works, or why do I think sex is supposed to be this particular way? And it can be good to go back and say, oh, right, because I learned that from this particular person or this particular experience, and I can let that go, right? But a lot of times we don't question where those things came from. And so the book is really designed to help people walk through that and then come out hopefully with their own, unique sexual beliefs and their own unique sexual experience of themselves.
And then your website, we just talked in the beginning, but how can people can work with you if they live in California, right? Then they can work with you. And you just do in person, you do online within California too, or just in person sessions?
Ideally in person, because I work somatically, so I'm really wanting to see people's bodies and things like that. But I do have, I've directed the Trauma-Informed Sex Positive Therapy Training Program. So there's a website, long URL, trauma-informed-sex-positive-therapy.com. And on there is a list of therapists who trained with me. And they're all amazing resources. So if you're really looking for this kind of connection between someone who is aware of trauma, can help with that healing, can help with pacing things for you in terms of doing trauma treatment, who also have a real commitment to being sex positive and kink aware and poly aware and all of those things, all the therapists listed on there are great. So, and they're all over, and some of them do, some of them are coaches, so they can do online work with people or telephone work with people. So,
and your website, your other one is
mf-therapy.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this will all be, we'll put this all this in the show notes here, everyone, too. But
And if you are in the Bay Area or Santa Cruz area, I'm going to do a workshop on pleasure as healing coming up March 7th here in Santa Cruz. It's an afternoon workshop.
It's 2020.
2020. So March 7th, and that's through Luminous Trauma Healing Center, which just opened here in town, which is exciting. So pleasure as healing, looking at sexuality as a path to your trauma healing. So
I think we just found the name. Can I call this podcast Pleasure as Healing?
Yes, sure.
All right, we got it. I mean, there'll be other parts in there too, but I like this.
Well, this is awesome. This was so great and flowed, and we answered some awesome listeners' questions, and I feel like we could have you on every month as our in-house therapy.
We'll be our in-house therapist.
I'm happy to come anytime. It's super fun.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, to all of our listeners out there, we love you. Thank you for just being you and being part of the Shameless Sex Revolution. You don't know how much we adore you. And
but we do.
I think about you all every day, usually when I'm using my magic wand. And you know what I really get off on are 5-star reviews on iTunes. So if you feel the need and have a free moment of your day, please rate Amy and I on iTunes. It just helps more people find us and get information about helping them heal their lives. So y'all, thank you. And ciao for now. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.